I had a fascinating revelation about how your own parenting cannot really be judged by yourself and can't really quite be judged by even your own children, because they're going to have different perceptions of it. I have made more money since giving birth to Lily than ever in my career. So putting my foot off the pedal has allowed talent to actually catapult my business forward. What has actually helped me thrive in the last few months is being extremely religious about this one daily activity between me and my husband. When we see that something's off with the other, we say 3 feelings and why.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Flip Your Mindset. I am your host, Stacey Uhrig, and my guest today is Rosie Kosinski. Hi, Rosie. How are you?
Hi, Stacey. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have Rosie on because Rosie, in addition to being a new mom, is also an entrepreneur. And I've owned a lot of businesses. There's a big difference between entrepreneur and solopreneur. Would you call yourself an entrepreneur or a solopreneur?
That's a great question. I was a solopreneur for most of my time, and I feel like now more entrepreneur as I depend on more and more people, whether they're subcontractors or colleagues.
So either way, you own your own business, and your business is in branding, right? And you and I were having a side conversation about the new roles, the transitions, and the transition into motherhood can be a very, very challenging one. You know, we have this fantasy and this ideal version and vision of what that could look like. But then also the transition from being what you were telling me offline, a mompreneur, right? A working mother versus someone, and I'm going to put in quotes, stay at home. Right? Because what does that even mean?
Right.
And we just both agreed it's worth having the conversation on the podcast of all of these transitions and really, how are we viewing the transitions? How are we viewing ourselves through our own healing or lack of healing of our own wounds, which filters everything, right? So much of how we mother is influenced by the way we were mothered. And when I say that, it really means for me personally is you're observing the way you were parented. You maybe observed the way that your siblings were parented. And then you either adopt like parenting styles or you don't. You either follow that roadmap and maybe create another road within that existing framework, or you look at that map, you crumple it up, you throw it in the garbage, light it on fire, and say, this is exactly the opposite way that I'm planning on parenting. Yeah. And some people think they have that option. Some people don't.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot that has to happen when we become actual moms.
Yeah.
And if we're a working parent, a working mom, that extra transition is incredibly difficult. And I don't think it's one that's discussed enough. I have so many clients right now that are in your age group that are working moms that are on the struggle bus, and they have a lot of guilt and shame that they're on the struggle bus.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great conversation to have. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. And I almost want to jump quickly to the end before the beginning, because I just want to tell everyone under the struggle bus that ultimately you have to have grace for yourself and trust in the process. Like, because to kind of have to offer a little anecdote, and to jump off from what you said about like how you observe your parents through the lens of your own parenting. I had a fascinating revelation about how your own parenting cannot really be judged by yourself and can't really quite be judged by even your own children, because they're going to have different perceptions of it. Case in point, my mother, I always thought was so present in our lives, and she was an entrepreneur. She had her own business. She worked 7 days a week, but I never felt that she put her work first. I knew that she had to work. She kept food on the table for us. And when she was home, she was home. When she was engaged in conversation, she was looking us in the eyes. So I never felt second fiddle to her work. And my oldest sister, who doesn't share her feelings at all, I know she has a lot of trauma, but she's sort of taken the ideological, the God is good path, where she doesn't talk about her experience, but it kind of popped out of nowhere a few months ago, where she said, yeah, mom was a workaholic and she put her work before her family. And I was like, wait, are you talking about our mother? So it was so fascinating to me seeing two completely different perceptions of one mothering style. And part of it maybe was also our relationship. So I'm close with my mother, even despite not having lived with her for when I was quite young. We repaired our relationship and very close. So I see it in that way. And they were kind of disparate in their relationship. And so now fast forwarding to my parenthood, I sometimes think about, what's Lily gonna think about my parenting? And believe it or not, it doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter what Lily's gonna think, because all I can do is my best.
That's so great. And I think, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that anecdote, because I know just from working with my own one-to-one clients, I hear that a lot, especially if, I'm working with women who have mostly sisters. I find that depending on where they are in the order of birth, like where they are in the sibling set, every single child has a different interpretation. Now, in your particular case, you were the youngest, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Right. And was that the oldest of, you have 3 or 4 girls?
There are 3 of us. She was the oldest and significantly older. My mother had her when she was 20, had me at the wise age of 34. So, yeah.
So it's just really interesting because I see so many dynamics in that. And then I want to talk about how that influences the way that we see ourselves. And that's going to then influence the way that we work, right? And the way that we see our value and all of that. So I too I'm 14, well, really 13 years older than my sister. I'm 15 years older than my brother. And then there's one in between where I'm like almost 4 years old, like 3.5 years older. And the perceptions and the experience is just different, especially for the oldest to the youngest, especially when that age gap exists, because as you know, there's no manual for parenting.
Yeah.
By the time you've been doing it 5, 10, 15 years, your parenting is very different from when you first started.
Yes.
Your understanding of what parenting is very different. And so you're going to approach it differently. But then also by the time you're 5, your sister's still at home at 19, not at home.
Right. Left, gone.
Right. Exactly. And so because you're the youngest and there is such this age gap, you then get this other kind of time with your mother that she may not have had because she had to share. Right.
Exactly.
So I've said this many times, trauma is never what happened. It's never the fact that your mother worked the way that she needed to work. And I use needed intentionally.
Yeah.
It's the interpretation that the person who's feeling stuck about it has made that is negatively impacting their life, their mind, their body, and their psyche, and that they're still holding on to it a year later, 5 years later, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later.
Yeah.
Because they've made an interpretation. And that is the lens through which they're seeing everything. So it's like you're putting on a pair of glasses with a filter, but you don't know it. And it's how you see yourself. It's how you see others. It's how you see the world. And for sure, it influences how you mother.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So very valid. I hear it a lot. I see it a lot. And there tends to be frustration among siblings that they don't all see it the same way. And what I'll always say is you're each walking with your own invisible backpack. And in that backpack, you put your interpretations and then the coping strategies that you developed to navigate and manage those interpretations. And each one's going to be different and each one is valid.
Exactly.
Right? So you had a unique scenario. How did all of that influence how you decided to not just approach parenting, but parenting with the intention of also maintaining your business?
Right. That's a work in progress. And I think it's also very age specific. So like, Lily as a newborn, very different to now she's rolling around. And I was able to even put her on the ground during one of my meetings when my babysitter didn't show up. And so it's a little bit of a reactive situation that I'm in. And I can't stress enough how much I'm holding on to this idea of just giving myself grace, because I'm gonna be imperfect in both roles. But I am very intentional about where am I putting my presence right now. So if Lily's asleep or being taken care of, now I'm in work mode. And I saw a meme the other day that I thought was really relevant. It was an image of a woman taking care of her child, but she was thinking about work. And then and she looked stressed in the moment, but happy in work, in her mind. And then in the next frame, she's doing work, looking super stressed with thinking about being happy with her child. But she's miserable in both scenarios. And I just thought that was so good, because we kind of like have this golden orb around the alternative scenario. And I've been really intentional about being present in whatever moment I'm in and knowing this is where I'm supposed to be right now. Whether I'm changing a nappy or writing an email, this is where I am right now, and being super, super mindful and present. And I think guilt comes when we entertain the thoughts of, I should be somewhere else,
Yeah.
And being convicted about, and so for me, it is important for me to maintain my business. I love it. It's sort of another baby in a way. And I don't know if it's for everybody to maintain their business or employment. I also very much honor women who decide to put that aside, whether temporarily or permanently, and focus on their role in their children's lives. And I think it's a little bit like, a career change. Like, why do we see it as quitting a job and becoming a stay-at-home mom? It's not. It's putting your energies into this job.
It's the fluidity. And I think what happens is people lose sight of the process, and they're very focused on the end result, right? We're very end result driven and very end result focused as a country, as a society. And the reality is that life is the process. You're never done. There's no end until the end, right? And so even if somebody has this big, massive goal to build a business and sell it off, and has this huge, big business plan, and actually has all of the skills and the resources to be able to do that, selling that business is not where you're going to have learned all the things that you need to learn in life in order to transform, grow, and evolve. Where you're going to learn it is the process, right? And you and I, and raising a family and raising a child is a process. And, I've been in and out. I've had so many different roles and careers in my lifetime so far. I mean, I'm 52, so I've been working for 30 years. And I've had to evolve in my roles when I became a parent. And that roles evolved and shifted, and not everybody around me liked the way that I was evolving and shifting. And I had to stay in my truth and not listen to what was best for everybody else, and had to figure out what was best for me as a mom. But there's a lot of pressure for women specifically, because I'll just state, at least here in this country, primarily it's just the expectation for the most part that the most traditional way to raise a family is for the mother to be home, quote unquote, or for at least for the mother to be the primary caretaker. But also perhaps expected to also be generating an income, or maybe they want to be working, right?
Yeah.
There's so many different.
I actually found it grounded me postpartum.
I have a lot of friends, and my sister included, is like, I'd be a horrible mother if I wasn't working.
Yeah, I feel blessed to have had that opportunity. I don't know what maternity leave would have looked like if I'd taken it, but
yeah,
I think that there was a part of me that felt more balanced, I think, even hormonally, because I kind of locked in. I was sort of a dopey, I don't know. I was a completely different person for a few months. You know, you really are
very brain fogged and very.
When I was on Zoom, I was on, and that was really cool because I had these points in the day or in the week that I was on, and it kind of gave me the confidence that I can actually get back to that. And you know, it was interesting that you were talking about what we perceive from society, because this is actually a pet peeve of mine. As someone who was not raised to feel lesser as a woman, like I do feel blessed that my family, there was no, I would say, overt feminism, but there was no, you know, devaluing of women. And so I sometimes hear, you know, and rightly so, a lot of my clients who are women feel like they kind of trudge through some limiting beliefs because society put that on them. And I have compassion for that. And I do acknowledge that some people have even really overt oppressive language in their life, whether from loved ones. I mean, I am working with a woman who is trying to brand herself after 15 years of being with a man who thought she was basically on vacation as a stay-at-home mom. So like it happens. But at the same time, I also believe that, like, when you go into the garden and you're told, look for the weeds, all you see are the weeds. And when you're told, look for the flowers, you're going to find the flowers. And I think that, again, to avoid positive or toxic positivity, I always have a hard time with that. Yeah. To avoid toxic positivity, but to still acknowledge the blessings that we have and that we can leverage. And one of the things that I notice around me and that I have fallen into is absorbing the pressures, absorbing the criticisms, but rejecting in like false humility the compliments. And who but my husband, a white straight male, has been the biggest advocate for me to, as he says, fucking take the compliment. He'll come home, I'll tell him about my day, and he's like, you're amazing. You did all of that. You held a meeting and you kept our baby alive. You know, she had a milestone today. That's amazing. You're amazing. And I'll be like, you know. And so now I'm also making a conscious effort, and I really urge other women to do this.
You're so right, because
it's a fucking compliment.
But it's not only that, and this comes all the way back to deprioritizing ourselves and devaluing ourselves. But you know, I've been having some health issues lately, and I was on the phone with my mom, kind of keeping her up to speed as to what's going on. And she was like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Because you're always, you know, giving to others through your work, whatever. And I'm a parent. And I literally caught myself because I go, it's just not that big of a deal. And then I thought to myself, I literally, in that split second, I heard myself say it. And then you know, I'm all about parts work. And then I thought to myself, why can't you just allow someone to take care of you? Why can't you just allow someone to say, hey, I hear you, I see you. And that sounds kind of like a lot. And are you okay? And the moment she asked me in her way if I'm okay, I literally tried to dismiss it.
Mm.
And it really resonated with me in the moment because I was like, wow, I do that.
Yeah.
And why, and more importantly, why do I do that?
Right. Exactly.
What part of that is uncomfortable for me to receive care or concern or worry? Now, I'm not actually overly worried or concerned. I'm more curious about my health. So maybe that's part of it, right? So I was analyzing all of that. I don't feel like overly concerned. I know what that would feel like in my system. But it was uncomfortable for me that somebody else was worried or concerned.
Right. Yeah.
So to your point, it's uncomfortable for you when someone is giving you praise. I also don't do well with praise.
Yeah.
If people, and I think part of it is when people say, oh my God, that's amazing. You did A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. Here's what I've learned is sometimes that's hard for me to accept as a compliment because it actually didn't feel like work, or it didn't feel that hard, or it was something I really enjoyed doing.
Right. Yeah.
So like, I know I have 5 commitments on my calendar today. I have 2 podcasts, a consult, and a client. And there must be something else. I can't remember what it is. And that feels like joy to me. It doesn't feel like a lot.
Isn't that
so when somebody says to me, well, what are you doing for yourself? I kind of think to myself, well, this is it. Like, this fills my bucket.
Yeah.
This fills my bucket. That's when you, I mean, this is a whole other podcast, but when you find your passion and you're living your passion and your purpose, and if you meet people that do that, they will tell you it never feels like work. And I can say, honestly, I have a lot of different stressors in my life, but since I've opened my practice, my job has never stressed me. None of it.
What a blessing is that?
Huge, because I lived for 30 years or 20 plus years of being very overwhelmed in work and having a great deal of massive anxiety, medication, pill popping anxiety to get through work, probably from my very first job all the way up through till 2012. So from 1994 to 2012, that's 16 years ish. I don't even know if I'm doing that math right. That's sad.
Yeah.
I was so anxiety ridden. So I really do recognize and am aware within my own system what a blessing this is, and that I know I'm in the right place.
Right. And you found it eventually, even if it was delayed.
It didn't matter. And here's the thing. I'm going to call you on that. Who's to say it was delayed?
Right. Yeah. Because you learned so much
at the right time.
Yeah.
Because here's the reality. And this is going back to the process. And what I want to talk about next is some of the language shifts that we adopt as we go through this process, is that I wouldn't be as passionate and as effective as I am as a coach, as a speaker, as a podcaster, as an educator, if I started it earlier. I started this business when I was 49 years old. That was my goal. By the time I'm 50, I want this thing up and running. And I did it by the time I was 49. And I just remember thinking, like, everything I've ever been through, and again, it's the process, the journey, not pretty. Not pleasant, but all of it was valuable because it gave me this tremendous amount of what I'm going to call post-traumatic wisdom or post-traumatic growth that makes me good at what I do. If you told me in my 20s or 30s I'd be doing this, I'd be like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
So it's not delayed. It's actually exactly right at the right time in my life. Yeah. Right. And God willing, I make it 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, what have you. I start at 49. I could be literally doing this for 30 years if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so cool. Yeah.
So it's like a half-life in my career. You build all this stuff that you learn about yourself, and then you take all of that wisdom and you
Yeah.
build something around it. And I always say making an income while making an impact, right? You have the right to do that. So,
And you're so right, because also, you know, when I started Shattered Pencil Studios,
which is a great name, by the way.
Yes, it was sort of as a graphic designer. I was doing a ton of the kind of nitty gritty nuts and bolts work of the design, you know, and I kept dreaming about becoming more of a creative director, of project managing, because what I really, really loved was taking a stressed out person, you know, on the other side of the desk who didn't really know what the process was going to be like, what the end result was going to be like, and making it a fun process, a growing process for them, which is kind of why we're talking today, because a lot of their, you know, guts come out. Yeah, of all their stuff comes out. All, you know, they empty their luggage, their baggage out, and we kind of parse through it and use it as inspiration. And I kept trying to force this role and lean on other, you know, creatives, but it was a scary shift. But Lily, my daughter, popping out, forced me to do that, because I just didn't have the bandwidth to look after her and do the graphic design and project management. So I had to give that work away. And she was that moment for me, you know. I tried to do it for 10 years before her, but really those moments in life, as you say, like, you have to kind of have this precursor experience. You have to trudge through and build
I'll
it.
say this. So you made that choice and that decision based from a place of abundance.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of, and I'm going to speak specifically to working moms,
Yes.
okay, who work from a place of scarcity.
Yes.
Where I don't have the right to drop anything because then I feel less than, or I'm going to be perceived as less than. And then people are going to think, and, or you and I were talking about this off camera, I'll have I'm putting in quotes for people who are not watching, a gap in my resume, a resume gap, where if I take my foot off the pedal at all, excuse my language, I'm fucking myself up for the future, because again, they're so end result oriented. Right.
Although, spoiler alert, and I have to say this to all mompreneurs, I have made more money since giving birth to Lily than ever in my career. So putting my foot off the pedal has allowed talent to actually catapult my business forward, and trusting people and the process, as scary as it is, and as much as you feel
the
like
hook.
Yeah.
That's the hook, because, and as you know, there are a lot of people, and again, I'm specifically speaking to working women, okay, who are navigating life through unhealed shit.
Right.
So if you're
go to Stacy.
If you're navigating your life through a lens of it's not enough, or I have the fear of using my voice and saying to my spouse, if there's a spouse in the equation or a partner in the equation, not that I can't do both.
Yeah.
It's right now, I want to make a choice.
Yes.
Or I feel like I need to make a choice for my mental health. This is called a boundary.
Yes.
That I feel as though at this period of time in my life, on this journey, I'm best serving our family in this role, that role, or this new role.
Exactly.
And there is so much fear. I see so many fear-based decisions of, I'm going to get backlash. I'm going to be told I shouldn't. I'm going to be told, well, I've heard this. We made this decision to have a child knowing you were going to work, and now you're lying to me. And money, 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 money. And all of these things dictate, and that person's needs, wants, desires, calling, intuition has to be squandered, squashed, and put on the back burner. And then they don't understand why they have anxiety. They don't understand why they feel disconnected. They don't understand why they don't feel whole, but they have fragmented a very core part of themselves and kind of ostracized it, which is my voice, my choice, my courage, my clarity, because other people are influencing the decision. And they have never learned that it's okay to speak up. And for many people, maybe that was not a safe thing to be able to do. For some people, maybe physically it was safe, but emotionally, if they showed up and it wasn't well received, the pain was so great that they just learned to navigate the world by making sure you're happy and just putting my needs to the side. This is a massive problem that I see primarily in women. This is not to say I don't see it in men, because I do. But as species, in general, we tend to, I find that the male species, I'm going to really use species as like a key term here, because it's not black and white, but in general terms, they tend to go more to the flee or fight. Right? I'm going to forcefully state my opinion to the point that you're uncomfortable and you're going to drop it. Or I'm just going to literally get up and walk away from the conversation. So we can't have a resolution where they freeze. They're present, but they're not present. Their traditional way of coping is not to fawn. For women, I see primarily fawn and freeze. Which is, what do I need to do to keep the peace? And or I'm just going to check out. So knowing that, this is a good segue. You're working with primarily women, small women business owners who are in the process of branding themselves.
And what they often feel the pressure of is having a complete and solid and final identity. And what I like them to embrace is that what we're about to brand is a living, breathing organism. It's going to change. And a lot of tough conversations kind of sprout from that, because I think even just as humans, we like this idea of like, I can just package it and it'll be great. We can just put it on a shelf and it looks so pretty. But the logo isn't this like final stamp. It's a representation of a really, continually evolving thing. It can have a long shelf life, but it's going to represent something that's going to morph. And hopefully through growth and through, continued mindfulness in how you're presenting yourself, how you're perceiving yourself. And, I kind of joked about it, but it's not a joke. If you want to brand yourself, step one, go to Stacy, do some parts therapy, and then, really consider like what it is that you want to show off, practice how proud you can be about yourself, because
I think that's the kicker. They're not being self-led, right? There are also, to your point, the parts work. There's so many different parts that we develop brilliantly, I might add, young, in order to navigate back to what we talked about earlier, our perceptions and interpretations of the world around us. And those parts are usually driving the bus of life. And we've either moved to the passenger seat, the back seat, the trunk, or we're hanging on for dear life on the bumper.
And then the question is, who are you really branding? Are you branding one of the parts, or are you branding yourself?
Right. So everything that we need when we're self-led, the qualities of being self-led are, you are clear on who you are. You have choice and voice to share it. You're courageous about who you are. You're confident. All of this leads to this deep desire to not just connect with others, but you feel self-connected. And this generates a sense of calm and knowing. It's like this deep guttural knowing of who I am. It's unwavering. It's unshakable. And when we have other parts driving the bus of life, and we are not driving it from the self-led piece of ourself, we're not really sure who we are because we know we don't, and we hear this terminology, I don't really feel like myself.
Yeah.
I don't really even know who I am anymore.
Yeah.
It's not that you're not there. It's just that you are way in the shadows.
Yeah.
Right. And so what we do is we strive to identify, well, what parts of you are running the ship right now? What parts of you are driving the bus? And can we sit down and have a little chat around the conference table with these parts?
Yeah.
With you as the head saying, listen, thank you for showing up when I was 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 20. I appreciate it. I needed that level of support then.
Yeah.
But right now, it's my turn. And what would it look like to change this organizational framework so I get to be the leader now?
Yes.
And that's a very, very possible thing to do, as you know.
It is. I did it pregnant with you, and it was transformative. My husband did it. And I'd like to share just one more small piece of, I don't want to call it advice, what helped me.
Okay.
So even after all the parts therapy and all that, in January, I had a really rough time. Lily was going through a developmental leap. She was crying a lot. I was exhausted. The whole 4 months of sleep debt had kind of hit me like a wall. I am very, very blessed with a very supportive husband. So this came kind of through great discourse. So I was going through, I think it was like anxious depression by the end of January. I did not enjoy my own company, and I'm the kind that likes my own company, but I was sick of it. I was sick of complaining in my head. I was sick of Grant coming home. How was your day? Stressful. Like, I was like, I'm done with this narrative. So I vowed I would not say that the day was stressful. I would tell him what actually happened during the day, and not qualify it. But what got me through and what has actually helped me thrive in the last few months is being extremely religious about this one daily activity between me and my husband. And we just, when we see that something's off with the other, we say 3 feelings and why.
Yeah,
and
I can
we
see you guys doing that.
Yeah, 3 feelings and why. Anxious because I got this email and I feel that. And you have to be super specific, and it feels like taking a giant dump. Honestly, I hate to be that TMI, but like, it's so surprisingly effective, because after the parts therapy, there is a maintenance phase. I feel like, to maintain yourself in that freaking driving seat, and those feelings can sometimes start introducing those parts right back in.
Yeah.
But when we acknowledge them, and I don't have to tell you this, but I was fascinated learning that those feelings, when they're not communicated, live in a part of our brain that does not have language or time.
Yeah.
They can stay there for as long as they freaking want until we introduce language. Then it brings up to the frontal cortex.
Right.
Then the problem solving. Then it's just like the rest of the brain can do its thing. But it's no longer in this like cave of doom. So I tell you what, just that one habit every day, 3 feelings and why.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to actually start using that in my household. And I love that, because here's the thing with parts work. I always tell this to my clients, and I hope, I always get this message across, which is the journey of healing is not supposed to be a path to complete peace all the time. Meaning, you're never going to not feel dysregulated. You're never not going to feel like you go through a challenge like you went through in January. What it means is that you're so mindful based on the work that you've done that you can easily recognize something's off.
Yeah.
You can start to identify who's really driving the bus here and why. You can start to dialogue with these parts and have a negotiation, if you will, within
Yes.
this internal system of yourself. And the goal is always not to just say, I'm never going to feel anything again, because that's very, very unrealistic.
Yes.
The goal is to decrease the duration, frequency, and intensity of how long you feel like you're not in that self-led role. And I don't think that it's realistic for people to think that they're going to be self-led 247. I think maybe the only people who could ever be self-led 247 are monks on a hill in Nepal who maybe have not come down the hill in decades, that don't know what's going on, that are not being exposed to all the things we're being exposed to.
Yeah. And as a visual person,
through media, through
exactly.
anything, you're always going to find something that's going to dredge up a part.
Right.
And that's okay. The parts are not bad. There's no bad parts. They're very benevolent pieces of you that have each intricately learned how to navigate life and its stressors in a way that has benefited you at the time. But as we get older, are usually no longer relevant.
Yeah.
And when you can learn by working with me, but there's also so many podcasts, so many great books to just get exposed to the concept of parts work. And so many great people are really starting to talk about it now.
And you know what else I loved about parts work? I was talking to a friend of mine about it today. It's very comprehensive, but it's a program. Like,
it's a system.
And I know a lot of people who are jaded by talk therapy because it's just years and years of it. And I remember a dialogue that really struck me in the head. One girl was like, I'm still healing, I'm like clearing shop and just, there's a lot to sift through. There's a lot of garbage I need to, clear from my head. And her friend was like, all right, you've been cleaning this room in your head for years. When are you going to start decorating? And it made me think about, like maintaining a home. If say the home became like a hoarder's paradise and it got cleaned up through parts therapy, you're still doing the dishes every day. You're still doing the laundry every day.
Amen. Good analogy.
It's not like it's suddenly that's how it is, catalog ready all the time. It's about maintaining, and it's also about honoring the moment when everything's a shit show on a Friday night, and tomorrow you're just going to go through a cleaning spree, and it's okay.
Well, look, the reality is that people who cannot embrace that ongoing process can't embrace it because it feels unpredictable. And if that is one of the unhealed wounds of having lived in a lot of like very negative unpredictability, it feels very threatening.
Yeah.
This is why you see everybody want to have everything tied up neat with a bow.
Yeah.
It's a coping strategy.
With business, it's messy. Right. And what we see, unfortunately, on, the business on social media, it's always so beautifully branded.
Right.
And it's like so frustrating when it's not clean. But yeah.
But you know what? I love what you just said, because what we see on social media, and this hooks a lot of people up, is the beautifully branded family.
Exactly.
The beautifully branded motherhood.
Yes.
The beautifully branded, curated outfit of the day. Yeah. Nobody's showing the behind the scenes. And that's the problem. And every single day in work, it's the behind the scenes. That is the value.
Yes. That's where the good stuff is. And
by the way,
encouraged by a colleague of mine who has 2 kids. She's just a wonderful human in every possible way. And she's got an amazing, I helped brand her, but she took it to another level through her own efforts. And I asked her, how the hell do you do with the 2 kids? And now you're an entrepreneur. And she's like, I don't know. And every day it's a different story. Like, so she looks really like she's got it all together, but it is every day a different solution to the different problems that arise. And I just love that. It was actually helped me feel okay with how in my life at the moment, it's pretty reactive and it's okay. I'm good with that right now.
I love Dr. Ramani. She's an expert in narcissistic abuse, and I follow her very closely because I have a lot of clients that are struggling with that. Yeah. And I heard her say something to the effect the other day of healing looks like fluidity, meaning like you know you're on the healing path when you're more flexible. When you can easily and effortlessly be flexible with life and work within work within the fluidity of life. There is a massive misperception that life is supposed to be X. And I hate the word should. I curse like nobody's business, but to me, should is like literally one of the worst words. Should and fail are like two of the worst words in the dictionary, in the human language. And should just is so shrouded in shame.
It is.
And it's setting somebody up for the fall because it's not supposed to be any one way. And anybody that tells you that it is likely comes from a long line of people that needed to have very strict constraints for them to feel safe and secure themselves.
Yes.
And so they pass down to you this indoctrination that it's supposed to be. It should be. Where the reality is it can be whatever the fuck we want it to be.
Right.
We get to choose that.
And I think that's the scary part of being a mother in work is there's the shoulds but you also got little ones looking at you. So whatever you're doing is also being observed. And I think that's some of the terror as well.
Listen, you said it at the beginning and it's a great way to wrap it up. You're doing the best that you can.
Yeah.
And so no matter what you do at the end of the day, it won't matter what she thinks if you know you're doing your best. And that is a whole other podcast because most of the people that sit on my couch or sit across from me in a Zoom meeting, more than half of it, probably I would say 75 to 80% is because there's parental issues, meaning the way that they parent, were parented, influenced the way that they navigate life now. And they made a lot of agreements and a lot of acceptances of a lot of things. And they're ready to break
the 4 agreements.
And it's time to break the cycle.
Yeah.
And the tough part about that is that we're assuming that they should have known better. That the parents should have known better.
Right.
But the reality is that they only know what they observed and were taught by people who were born and raised in the 20s.
Yes.
And they were raised and observed and taught by people that were born in 1900s or 1890. Like we're just not that far removed and things have grown exponentially.
That is so true.
Humans have transformed exponentially. The environments that we're living in have grown exponentially, but yet some people are expecting us to apply the same rules today to our great grandparents from 1890 or 1900. My grandparents were born in 1919.
I know.
So my great grandparents were born in the 1800s.
Yep.
Why? Why does the bread have to be made that way? Why does the recipe have to be that way?
Yeah.
Why does the family unit have to be this way? 9 times out of 10, people will force us to want that because it's what makes them comfortable because they're uncomfortable with the change.
Yeah.
So when it comes full circle back to this journey of embracing motherhood today in 2024, where many women have the choice to work.
Yes.
By
Or
the
not.
way,
And,
are
the
great.
stay-at-home moms who feel
And
shame
it's
and
a choice,
yeah, it's a
right?
choice. That's what feminism is
But we're
choice.
just not that far removed from
Yeah,
women not having choice,
exactly.
not even being able to vote.
Right.
We've our community has gone through major shifts, and not everybody's caught up with the times on that.
Yeah.
So even if we feel it, maybe our spouses, parents and grandparents have an issue with it. Everybody has an opinion,
Yes.
right?
And there's right.
And theirs is right. So knowing your truth, trusting your knowing, going with your gut, listening to your intuition, following that confidence and courage, reinstalling it is all a part of that journey
Yes.
of how you learn to reconnect with yourself. It's not about the destination. It's not the fact that the baby's here. That is not the destination. That is a pit stop on the roadmap of motherhood. A
Yes.
roadmap that is not for the faint of heart.
Yes. And long may it last.
As long as it may last. So we could go on, but I think we're at a great stopping point. How would you like to end today's podcast? What is the last thing on your mind? What would you like people to know?
I just want to express gratitude to you for having me and for the privileges and blessings of even being able to talk about this. There are so many people who don't even have choice in that. So blessed to be here, to be alive, to have a business, to have a family. And I always want to hold in my heart space for people who don't have any number of those things. So thank you for this time and this moment. Time is a life currency. So thank you for your little pocket of time.
Thank you. Guys, if you enjoyed this, you want to learn more about Rosie, all of her information is in the show notes. She is the owner of something called the Shattered Pencil Studio, which is super cool. And she is here to help mompreneurs rebrand themselves. She's very bright, as you can see, with what life is really meant for. And working with her, I think, would not just transform someone's business, but probably transform somebody from the inside out. So we're also so grateful for having you on today. And again, you can find all of her information, her website links, all of her good stuff in the show notes. Rosie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciated it.
Oh, it was lovely. Thank you.